Hello, we're joined today by Martina Hodgson, and are very fortunate to have her on. Very thankful that she's made the effort to come on, and I'm sure we're going to have a great conversation. So, multi-award winning, and your practice, the dental architect as well, won awards. It was the Private Dentistry Awards, wasn't it?
I was both actually. We were very fortunate, yeah.
Oh wow, wow, wicked!
Yeah, so we won UK Practice of the Year at the Dentistry Awards, which was
awesome.
Cool.
So I wanted to talk to you about that because I really appreciate good brands, and there's so many factors about that practice that I like. So one, the name is amazing.
Thank you very much.
The internals of the practice are beautiful. The branding's amazing. The website's amazing. So you've pretty much hit all of the different things that you can when starting a new business that you've got under your control. So where did that name come from, and where did the kind of inspiration to create something like that come from as well?
Well, I'll start with the inspiration. So it was just a bit random. I'm a bit of opportunity seizer. So I wasn't really looking to build a practice or anything like that. I've already got a lovely practice in Wakefield. And I think it was during the pandemic, my husband's in property, and he said, I bought this new building in Leeds, and normally he buys like sheds and stuff. So I wasn't particularly really interested. And he was like, will you come and have a look at it? I was like, okay, then I've got nothing better to do. So when I walked into this beautiful building in the centre of Leeds, it's a Victorian old leather warehouse, and it's just got the most stunning features to it. But it was an absolute state. It was disgusting. There was no floors, no walls, no ceilings. It was just absolutely dilapidated. But I walked in and it kind of just hit me. I just saw this vision of a dental practice there, and I thought, okay, let's do this. So I literally, that was it. It was like, I literally was going, oh, I'll build a dental practice here. And I was just going to take the ground floor. So it would have been like a kind of little nice 3-surgery dental practice. And then I kind of realized everything was going to be really squeezed in. So then I took the first floor as well, which is like massive. So now we've got kind of potential for 9 surgeries in there. We've got 5 up and running. So it just became this monster that it wasn't supposed to be originally. And it was one of those things that, like, you get yourself in so deep that there's no going back. Like, you've involved too many people and you've spent too much money. So it was, it's definitely been a challenge, would be an understatement. But I have to say the naming process was actually one of the enjoyable parts of the journey. And the name had obviously lots of different names. It actually was a really, really difficult process. And I worked with a branding consultant called Cara Benden, who's amazing. And we actually did like a naming workshop, and we spent some time kind of looking at all sorts of aspects of what we could bring into the name and the brand. So we were looking at Leeds and, being in Yorkshire, and the history of Leeds and the history of the building and the architecture and what I'm about, and kind of cosmetic dentistry and women in dentistry and all these kinds of things. We just kind of threw it out there. And at the end of the day, the dental architect was actually one of my original names that I really liked before I went through that naming process. But going through that process, that kind of came up at the end to me as just something that really resonated with me. And it kind of encompasses not only the beautiful architecture of the building, but also the architecture of what we do with teeth. And I think what we do is both scientific and artistic, and we do a lot of design work with teeth and all this kind of stuff. So I felt that that's encompassed it all. But I'm glad you like the name. And it's really funny because I worked with 2 business consultants helping me open the practice, and they both didn't like it. One said it sounds like an architect firm, fair enough, and one said no one will be able to spell it. So they both told me not to go with that name, and I ignored them, and then I've had nothing but positive feedback ever since. So thank you.
Well, it seems to fit the building as well. you know, so
Exactly.
that the name
Yeah.
seems to fit the building. I think if you were in a different building, it might not have made as much sense, but I think there's a confluence of different factors there that make that brand work, isn't it? So that's cool. So how important do you think a brand is?
I think it's massively important. And I think, oh my gosh, it's such a big subject, isn't it? But your brand, you know, when you talk about associates, you don't have to have a logo. You don't have to have a fancy name and fancy colours. Your brand can just be you, who you are, what you stand for, your values, the quality of work that you produce, the relationship that you have with your patients, your USP, finding it, what it is that makes you stand apart from other dentists. And so that's where brand starts, really. And I don't think, you know, when you first start out in dentistry, you should be working towards building your brand. And I guess brand is just the newfangled way of saying your reputation, you know, in a way. You should be looking to build a good reputation for yourself. And I think then brand will follow, but brand can only come when you understand your values, your USP, what you're about, because brand has to be something authentic. And it took me 23 years to kind of figure that one out. So it's not easy.
I was going to say, the feeling I get when I look at your practice in Leeds is it's almost like the pièce de résistance, like the culmination of your career to this point. It almost feels like everything you've experienced and you've brought it into life in that business.
That's exactly it, Harry. I feel like it's me, but in a business. Yeah. So everything that I stand for, everything I believe in, my values, my purpose, that's all in there. And so the people that come and work in there as well, they have to fit in, you know, they have to align with those values and align with that purpose. And you naturally find that you attract those types of people. And if they don't fit in, you know, they go. And, you know, so it's really interesting. But yeah, I like it that you said that, because it really is it is the combination of everything I've learned and everything I am. So it's a very personal project.
But those are the best brands, you know, those are the best brands, the ones that are an amplification of who you are. And you said a really important point. You actually have to know what your values are first and who you are, and find your voice as a person. So that kind of thing I find really interesting is you've really honed in on who Martina is, and you've managed to put that into your practice, which is really cool to see.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I did some work with my team, you know, over the last few months, and you know, I've worked on kind of condensing my values down to three values basically, because I worked on my purpose as well. And so I did some values work with my team, and out of like a possible, you know, 150 words that could describe our values, they nailed it down to 3 themselves, and 2 of those 3 values were exactly the same as my own personal values. So what I was saying about people, you know, attracting people that align with you and, you know, see your vision, that just shows you that, you know, it's working, it's happening. And if you go to any member of my team now and say, what's our values? They'll tell you. It's excellence, it's honesty, and it's fun. And they all know that. And it's brilliant, because when they know the values of the business, every action they take, every decision they make, every interaction they have with a patient, every piece of clinical work that they do should align with those values. So if it's not excellent, if you're not being honest, you're not having fun at the same time, you know, then what's it all for, really? So I like that, because I'm a bit of a control freak. I'm a bit of a control freak, but it gets to the point where you can't like oversee every interaction, every email, do you know what I mean? So you, by allowing your team to understand the values, they have that kind of, it's almost like a rule book that they can work with every day. But they built those values themselves.
It's a weird one, isn't it? Because I feel like, I was talking to my wife about this the other day. I feel like when you create a business, it almost has an energy of its own, right? And it's like you put the effort in to create this thing that has its own working culture and the way it operates and everything. and it's like this buy-in then you get from the team who believe in what you've kind of projected, but it ends up becoming its own entity almost, that you're helping direct, but it's almost got its own fuel behind it. Do you feel like your team has bought into that culture, and you feel like, I feel like the brand's quite important to allow that buy-in? Has that been your experience as well?
Yeah, because I think when you have a good brand, you're unconsciously sending out that signal of what you're about and who you are. And so I think when people see that, and they see that, for instance, the attention to detail in like the interiors and in our patient journey and the service that we offer our patients, you'll attract those kind of people. You know, you're not going to get, some sloppy receptionist who can't be asked to like be presentable and just wants to sit behind the desk chewing gum all day. You're not going to get that kind of person.
Yeah, for sure. And another thing I was going to ask you as well is setting up a squat practice. So obviously you've managed or got your other practice as well that you've kind of built up over time and bought pieces of, and then got to a point, was that 6 years ago that you got fully into the Wakefield practice?
Yeah, so I started there as an associate in 2005, and then I bought one of the partners out a couple of years later. So I had a business partner for quite a long time, and then she retired about 6 years ago, and I bought her out then. So it was a very gradual process, and it wasn't, practice ownership was never anything that I aspired to. It didn't even occur to me, but the initial, my boss just kind of banged on at me for 2 years till I bought him out because he wanted to chill out. So that's kind of how it happened, really. And I borrowed, I think I borrowed £200,000, and I just thought, oh my God. I remember I was horrified at having to borrow that much money. And when you look back, it's like, wow, that wasn't so bad.
So even though you had doubts, you did it anyway. Was there a reason for that, or did he just wear you down?
I think he just wore me down, and I just thought, well, if I don't take this opportunity now, it's a great opportunity. I loved the practice, I loved the team, I loved my patients, and I just thought, well, yeah, it's a good opportunity. I'm not going in on my own. I had a business partner. It just felt like a little bit of a no-brainer and a silly thing to kind of turn down, really.
So when you've taken full ownership around 6 years ago, have you changed the practice in Wakefield quite a lot? And then has the learnings from that kind of developed into the dental architect as well?
Yeah, 100%. I think I was held back for a long time. I'm quite innovative. I like to be ahead of the curve. I think one of the very first things I did, literally within days, I bought... You'll laugh, but we changed to digital radiographs. And now remember, this is a practice that didn't have computers when I started, so, or a website. And I bought a scanner.
Right.
So, and those two things, I mean, the scanner, at the time seemed such a lot of money. And now, again, I've got 4. It's a no-brainer. If you want to push your business forwards and be profitable, you get a scanner. So they're just like 2 little examples. But then moving on from that, I got a TCO in. And again, everyone was like, what's a TCO? What's this girl do? She just sits there drinking coffee and chatting to patients. And it was a bit of everyone's got TCOs now, but it was only 6 years ago, but not a lot of people had TCOs. And again, I really worked hard on that patient journey. It's something I'm really passionate about. And Invisalign is my thing. That's what I do. And so we worked on this Invisalign patient journey. And I think we went from 0 Invisalign to kind of diamond. I think it took us about 3 years. So yeah, that's the kind of things that pushed us forwards in that way. So I felt like I was let off of the starting blocks.
Yeah. So that freedom has helped you be creative and bring your flavor into the practice. So one thing I was going to ask you as well, there's a big difference between being a practice owner of an established practice in terms of, it's been there for a while, and then transitioning to a squat, because with a squat, you're starting from scratch, right? So has that been an interesting experience to navigate, or did the learnings from before help anyway?
Yeah, I think obviously it's got its pros and cons. Having been in a practice for 17 years, the same practice, and being someone that wants to make lots of changes and all these kinds of things, you know what works and what doesn't work. You know what works within the layout of the building, you know what works within the team, you know what works patient journey wise, and you know what works marketing wise. You learn so much. And what you can do when you start a squat practice is you can take everything that you've learned, everything that you don't like, everything that you do like, and you can literally design your practice around that patient journey. So I knew what I want my patient journey to look like, and I literally designed the building to allow that patient journey to happen to the best extent, really. So that was an amazing opportunity to say, this is what I want, and we're going to do it properly from the start. And you can do that with your team. You can do that with your opening hours. You can say, right, we're going to open from 8 till 8 on a Monday and a Wednesday. Try and do that when you've got staff that have been with you 17 years doing 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. It's not easy. Whereas you've got a new team coming in, you're like, this is what we do. This is how we do it. And so you actually get a lot less pushback from your team. Implementing everything's a lot easier. But then you've got the absolute horrible side of it, which is that the stress about the money and how much it's costing and how much you've had to borrow and your cash flow and all that kind of stuff that keeps you awake at night. So obviously it's got its negatives and positives.
How long did the actual fit out take? Because you said it was quite a big transformation you had to undergo.
Yeah, it was a big refurb. So I'd say literally from walking through the door to opening the doors, it was probably 18 months.
Wow.
So that includes the design and everything else.
Was that kind of anticipated, or did it take longer than you thought it was going to take?
I think it definitely ran over. So that was really stressful because I had to cancel my CQC inspection 3 times.
Oh dear.
But she was very understanding. I had a lovely CQC inspector. So that was really stressful. And what I found really hard and really upsetting about that period was it wasn't I loved the build. Like, I loved doing builds. I could do them all day long, actually. It wasn't that. It was, there comes the point where you have to start interviewing and associates handing their 3-month notice period in. So when you've asked your associates to hand their 3-month notice period in, and then you're saying, actually, we're not going to be ready for another 2 months, you feel awful because you're letting them down. It's not so bad when you've got employees that have left their jobs and not that it's great, but at least you can pay them. And, I had a couple that started before we even opened, and I just give them lots of jobs to do and work from home and stuff like that. But I didn't like that because I felt like I let them down.
It's outside of your control, though, isn't it? It's such a tough situation. I've been there myself with squat practices. It can be very, very uncertain. You don't really know where you are with it at certain points. So 18 months is a long time. So one thing that you've done that I think is quite striking is your launch strategy was unbelievable. Like, so you hit the market with like this ripple effect. Like, everyone knew. It wasn't like, didn't do it quietly, let's say that. But was that like did you have a plan in mind as to how you wanted to do that, and how did you formulate that plan together?
Yeah, so COVID helped me with that, because during COVID, when we were shut, me and my TCO Tracy, we started, I just started running my own little Facebook ads. It was such a good period of time because I just did like a little video and ran some Facebook ads for video consultations for Invisalign. And I was getting these leads in at like £7 a lead, and every single person was answering and every single person was converting. It was unbelievable. So we started running these video consultations during lockdown. So I learned how to run really, really good video consultations in lockdown. The idea being that when we reopened, we'd got deposits taken, patients booked in, and when we opened our doors again, we were good to go. So that was just such an amazing tool to have, learn, because that's what I did. I just did exactly the same. So before we opened, I have got all my ducks in a row, all the software I needed, everything that I needed to make these virtual consultations run really, really well. And we just started running the adverts, running the consultations a couple of months before we opened. And then when we opened our doors, I think we had about 60 Invisalign consultations booked with deposits paid.
Wow.
With the dentists. So that was amazing, because you knew that when you open, you're going to have cash flow from day one. In fact, we were making money before because we were taking the deposits.
I mean, there's a completely right. So I talk to a lot of dentists now through the podcast and through other things, but way more than I used to, because I was in the phase of just building my squat practice and then just in that. So kind of go into a cave in your mind where you're just trying to figure stuff out. But one thing you find is there's a very different divergent path when they open squat practices. Some people are like you, who will push the launch heavy and hard, right, and go for it and try to get that cash flow up straight away. And others who are taking a more slow burn approach to doing it, where they're prepared to sit tight, work another job, come in here, do 2 or 3 days, build it slowly, and not really put that much money into marketing. How important would you say for, let's say, a person who started a practice or wants to optimize their existing practice, is it to actually invest in things like marketing, if that's what you're trying to do? Would you say it's something that you would recommend them doing, or would you say for some people the slow burn might be the better way to do it?
I don't think I'm a person that could do a slow burn, but that's fine, if that's what you want to do. The thing is about doing a big bang open, is it takes a bit of guts, and I think that's the difference. And if you want the safety of working another job and all that kind of stuff, that's totally fine. And if you're not used to spending a lot of money on marketing, again, that can probably be quite frightening to spend that amount of money. And I would definitely not recommend spending a large amount of money on marketing without having your patient journey absolutely bang on. So I knew that I had that, but I spent so much time and effort getting that process in place that I knew that every penny I spent on marketing, I'd get my return on investment. So to me, it was absolutely imperative to spend that money on marketing, because that's how you getting patients through the door. You're not going to get a lot of patients through from social media when you've got 100 followers because you've just started your Instagram. Unless you're one of these super dentists who've got 100,000 followers already, it's very difficult, and most people don't. So the first thing you need to do is get all your ducks in a row. You need to get your patient journey bang on. And until you do that, you shouldn't be spending any money on advertising.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. How important is the team? So, when you take on a project like this, you'll have like trusted people around you that you can just say, right, butt heads with them, brainstorm, get ideas. How important have the people around you been in this process of building the practice?
Everything, I haven't done it on my own. I've done it with an incredible team of people around me, and I'm always going to be grateful to the people that have helped me. And every time I go into the practice and I look at the people who were there at the beginning, I look at that girl on reception who I employed before we even opened, and she's stuck it out, and it's been tough, and she's sat there bored off her ass because we've got no patients. Do you know what I mean? And I look at her and I'm just so proud, because I think these are the people that believed in me. These are the people that got behind the vision. And yeah, I can only ever be grateful to those people.
Yeah. So how do you feel, this is another one that's interesting. When you open a squat practice or you're launching a new business, a new brand, it takes up so much of your time. How did you find a balance with like work life, family life, and how did that all go? And has that gotten better now that you've settled up?
Well, I have 2 kids, so they're like 10 and 13 now. So obviously I do need to spend time with them. I just worked really, really, really hard.
Yeah.
I have no words of comfort for anyone who wants to open a squat practice and kind of, but to me, I love it. I absolutely love it. I'm passionate about it. So, you know, I do it when the kids are at school. I do it when they're home and they're just off watching their iPads or whatever. You know, but I'm not going to sit here and say I haven't worked every night till 11 o'clock and every weekend. And, you know, and I feel bad about it. I do. I get horrible mum guilt, but it's what drives me. It's what I'm passionate about. And I don't suppose I'd have it any other way.
Where do you feel like that drive's come from? You know, because you're in quite a stable position with the practice in Wakefield. You'd built yourself up over time. So where did that drive, that push come from to go and do this massive project?
You make a very good point. And there's many times I've sat there going, why? Why would you do this to yourself? You've got a beautiful, profitable practice. I wish I knew the answer to that question. You know, that I don't have, you know, I've had very, very supportive parents. I've had a wonderful life. I can't say there's anything in particular other than I've always been like it. I think it's getting worse. Although I am quite tired now after opening the squat. But I think I love growth. Like, I just love growing people, and I love pushing the boundaries, and I love, I suppose, paving the way as well. You know, I don't know what it is, but I actually really loved, I suppose it was my way of expressing myself, you know, alluding back to what we were talking about earlier, as it really being an expression of me. I suppose I don't draw or paint, or that was just my way of expressing myself, I guess, and helping other people at the same time.
And you touched on something there, paving the way, and you certainly have. And I think a lot of women in dentistry in particular will look to you for a lot of inspiration. What would you say to, there's lots of associates, female associates out there that are thinking about jumping into creating their own practices and things, or maybe buying their own existing practice. What would you say to them about, in terms of words of wisdom or advice, and what to do and what not to do?
I think a lot of it is to do with confidence. I do think that women tend to lack a bit of confidence. I mean, I have a lot of female associates that I mentor, and a lot of the things I sort of do with them, I can see, is to kind of build up their confidence. And I think with women, we know that confidence does actually come with age, as like a graph, where sort of men's confidence is like that throughout their life. It actually dips a bit, I think, when they get to about 65. But women's confidence kind of really, really improves around around the age of 40. So I think I would say that it's just one of those things that come with time as well. But having the confidence to go and do it, it's been really, really important that I've had a really supportive husband, to be honest, that does help with childcare and all these kind of things. I don't think you can ever get away from mum guilt. I think it's a horrible thing. And I'll never not feel guilty that I'm not, I don't know, sat at home like playing chess with them every second of every day. But, you know, my husband always says to me, if you were, you know, a stay-at-home mom, you would be absolutely miserable. You know, you wouldn't, there's no part of me that ever wouldn't do what I do. And if I can kind of, you know, and I don't do it for money, I do it because I just love it. I'm passionate about it. And if I can show my children, and they can learn my values and they can see me being a success, then hopefully that will rub off a little bit on them. So I think
absolutely.
It's just about going.
What have you got? Is it a girl or boy? Have you got
two boys?
Two boys, right?
Yeah.
Wicked. Well, you know, one thing that they'll model from seeing you, you know, be such a hard hitter, you know, going out there in the business world and doing your thing, is I'm sure that they'll see that like strong women are, you know, it's normal to them, you know, and like people who are going out to achieve their goals. That's only a positive thing in my eyes, really.
Yeah. And they get
Because you
plenty of
model
time,
that,
don't
don't
they?
you? Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. My wife's similar, so we've had that same conversation. She's not someone who could be a stay-at-home housewife. So yeah, yeah, I think she'd get bored out of her mind if she had to do
Yeah.
that.
It's just that
So
you're always torn between the two.
right, so this is another one I was going to ask you is one of the hardest things about setting up a squat and getting it to run efficiently is hiring staff, right? Well, actually, hiring staff in general with any practice owners a tough point. So,
Yeah.
in terms of associates themselves,
Mm-hmm.
what kind of things do you look for? What's a green light and what's a red flag?
Okay. So really, it's about attitude. It's about a willingness to learn. It's about having that commitment to providing the best for your patients, no matter what. Clinical skills are important, but they can be learned, and you only get better with practice. So, to me, it's someone that's prepared to be flexible, someone that buys in again to your values, really. I think as a practice owner, I tell you what, you don't want your associates to be giving you problems day in, day out. You want your good associates, and this is just from a practice owner point of view, your good associates don't get patient complaints. They get lots of, lovely reviews. You never hear from them. They come to work, they earn good money, and they don't complain, and they just get on with it. And I feel sorry for my best associates because I probably haven't spoken to them for months, and it's awful because they don't give me any bother. They make lots of money. Patients love them, and that's what you want from you just want an easy life from your associates. You don't want divas, and they've got to make the business money. I mean, that's the way it is. And I think sometimes you end up carrying some associates.
What do you think? A lot of young associates now going on courses and all of this stuff. Like I kind of took an approach. I did do some courses, but my approach was much more getting mentored by more experienced clinicians. And I'm a really big believer that even if you have to take a pay cut from what you could be earning, it's a valuable thing to do because the type of work you'll be doing day in, day out will be upskilling you much more than just a course. Do you agree with that, or do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a really good attitude to have, and I think that you will have gained so much more from that. I mean, there's absolutely a place for there's some fabulous courses out there, but nothing really can replace having a mentor by your side to give you that kind of guidance. And that's what I do for my associates. So they all come in and they want to learn how to do Invisalign, and I'm there and I'm on WhatsApp and I'm doing Zoom calls with them and I'm showing them how to do it really well. I run study clubs for them all the time. And that's why they come and work for me, because they want that mentorship. And there's only so much you can learn from a course. And often you'll go on a course and you'll come back and then you never kind of put it into practice, because sometimes you can feel a little bit scared to kind of start. Do you know what I mean? So I think there's a place for both, definitely, but nothing can replace having good mentors.
Yeah. And in terms of the pay thing, on the last podcast, I ended up talking about this. I'm kind of taking a bit more of a salaried model. I worked under Marcos White at Courtyard for a while, and that was the way he did it. Yeah. And obviously I learned that from him, I guess. So what's your thought on that? Because Kunal was saying the same thing. Is like from a perspective of mentioning, we pay for the marketing, we pay for the TCOs, we pay for this infrastructure that didn't really used to exist. Like you said, 6 years ago, not that many people had those team members. We've got a member of the team who's just dealing with Leeds, for example, right? Yeah. So it's like, do you agree that the salaried model makes more sense now for practice owners? It certainly does. But do you agree that maybe associates need to start thinking about the way they're getting paid a little bit differently, or what's your take on it?
Yeah, you're seeing it more and more. And so my associates are paid on a case rate for Invisalign. So they just get a set fee rather than a percentage. And, because it's difficult to make a profit from associates, it really is, like you say, the overheads are just so crazy nowadays that you are seeing practices more and more work on this kind of model. So I think it is going to become more and more common. And I think it's the only way practices can survive, to be honest, without having a principal just beavering away to kind of support the associates.
And do you feel like there's a lot of onus on you still clinically to provide a lot of cash flow for the practice, or do you feel like your associates are able to spread that across your associates a bit more now?
So I think with Wakefield now, I've got it to a position where it is fully associate led, which is really, really nice. But remember, that's an extremely well established practice with amazing associates. Whereas the dental architect, obviously, to try and push that cash flow initially, I'm definitely having to do a lot more clinical, just to get it kind of up and running, I think. And I think then eventually you can get it to that model where it's associate led. But I think especially with my name over the door, patients want to see me. I want to make sure that they're getting a great experience. So to me, I'm a little bit precious at the moment about making sure that we're getting the cash coming in and patients that are having a great time, which they are. So, yeah.
So one thing we touched on with the brand and establishing quite a clear identity, how do you propagate that through the team? So do you have these little touch point meetings, or do you find that, the people that have been with you a bit longer are able to relay these messages for you? How would you say that works?
Well, in terms of communication with the team, I think we're really, really good. We do a lot of in-house training. So we have like huddles every week. We've just been doing a lot of one-to-one training. So training with the new patient team. So like you have like a new patient coordinator who deals with the leads that come in, TCOs. We've been doing a lot of reception training. So this is another advantage of a squat practice, is that you're not booked up 8 weeks in advance. You've got time in your diary to invest in training your team, and it absolutely works wonders. I wish I had the time to do it at Wakefield as well, because I can just see the fruits of our labours in just spending time with all these members of the team and training them on how you want that patient journey to be, and you just see what it's doing. And it just pushes the business forward so well. So constantly communicate. You can't communicate enough with your team, really.
Yeah, and one thing that, me personally, I'm finding quite tricky is handing off cases onto associates. Like I think we're all a bit control freaky, but I find that quite tricky to do, because I know that there's a variable there. I know that I can constantly deliver a certain standard of care, and it's just giving other people the trust to do that. How have you managed to build that skill over time as well, Martina, just from a personal perspective?
It is hard. You do just have to trust them, but what I do help them a lot. So with Invisalign, I know that they'll come to me if they've got a tricky case, and they'll just send me a WhatsApp and they'll be like, Martina, I've got like 3 cases. Can we have a Zoom? And I'll just have a Zoom call with them, and I'll just go through the cases with them, and you see them learning and you see them getting better all the time. So you do have to sometimes pick up pieces. But that's life, and I certainly didn't get to where I am without making horrific mistakes along the way, and I'm sure I continue to do so. I'm not too bad, hopefully, touch wood, but do you know what I mean? You've got to make your mistakes. You've got to learn.
Yeah, and another one is what's your advice for young dentists that are coming out of they've had a bit of a tough one, to be fair to them. They've had the last 2 years, 3 years. We don't need to go into that, but basically they've had a tough time. People qualifying, not doing the amount of repetitions of work that we probably did when we were qualifying. What would your advice be to those younger dentists that are coming through right now that might be listening?
Yeah, I mean, just don't run before you can walk. I think the world is so different now to when I qualified, and they're coming straight out and wanting to do Invisalign and all this kind of stuff, and they're seeing all these beautiful composite bonding cases. Oh, sorry. And it's really tempting to want to jump straight into that, but you have to remember that takes years and years of learning and practice to get to that point. it doesn't happen overnight. So I think you have to pay your dues. I would just work within the NHS, where you're not feeling that pressure to provide perfectly contoured posterior composites. Just get your skills up and do your time. And there'll come a time when you're like, okay, I want to start doing more private, and you'll feel more confident to do it. But just don't run before you can walk, because I think it's happening too much now. And I think, jumping into doing things like Invisalign when you don't know even the basics of orthodontics is quite scary to me, to be honest.
Mm. Yeah, and you see it a lot with, let's say, my world of implants. I see people who've just done a training course on placing single implants, trying to then go into full arch straight away. And I'm like, what are you doing, man? You need to get your reps up, So I think that you've touched on a good point there. I think a lot of younger dentists really do need to put the time in, get the repetitions up of basic, what it is? Hand skills, like hand skills, crown preps, root canals. Yeah. That's just building your motor, connections in your brain to make
muscle memory.
Yeah, it'll make you better at composite bonding later when you want to do it. So yeah, I mean that's cool, man. So right, so when you're looking at your practice now, you mentioned you've got 5 surgeries and you've got scope for 9 surgeries. So the next question, I'm kind of leading you there, but what's the future? What have you got in mind for the future, Martina?
Yeah, I think I'm never a planner. Like, I'm not a 5-year plan kind of girl, because you never know what's around the corner. But yeah, just to continue to push and grow it. I love, we've got some exciting plans in terms of like starting an academy, running training courses, all that kind of stuff, pushing the facial aesthetics. So loads and loads of ideas, and just continue to grow it, really.
Mm. And where do you, you just said you don't do like 5-year plans and stuff, but if you could have a vision in mind of what dental architect kind of turns into, what would be your ideal, like it becomes this?
I just hope it becomes like the go-to place, in Leeds, that everybody knows about, that it has this wonderful reputation for excellence. And I just hope, that we can continue to kind of build our reputation in that way and be the go-to place for everything, really.
And yeah, kind of heading into the final kind of part of it now. I've asked everyone this who's come on the podcast. Recessions, okay? So, you've, in running the Wakefield practice, you've probably seen a couple, or one at least. So how do you kind of plan that out for the new business, and how do you see that going over the next couple of years?
So recessions don't really scare me, like you say. I've been through a few, so yeah, you take a little bit of a hit, but you've just got to keep doing what you're doing. You've just got to keep up the marketing, keep up pushing the social media, keep pushing your reputation and getting out there, and just you would not believe what my girls do on a weekly basis to get our name out there. They are leafleting on the streets 3 times a week. They are going into businesses. They're doing wellness mornings. They just went the other night to this really cool spin studio called Ride, and they were just talking to all the members, and they got an Invisalign signed up and an implant signed up and 3 Demplan signed up, and they are getting out there, and no one else is doing it. They just sat there going, where's my patients? So, and people still got money to spend.
Yeah.
But then there's the other side of it where people don't have a lot of money to spend, but they want to make sure they're looking after their oral health still. So you've got to make sure you've got your bread and butter dentistry, you've got your Demplan, you're making sure people are coming in for the checkups and hygiene. But then you've got the bigger ticket items as well, because if you put all your eggs in one basket, I think that's when you're going to struggle. But people still need just dentists.
Yeah.
So I think it's just keep on with both sides of that.
And what was your biggest learning from, let's say this, what was the hardest point of time that you had to go through over the last 3-4 years? I mean, there's one obvious answer, but, apart from maybe lockdown, what would you say was the hardest point? Whether it's building the practice or?
I think I would say probably a couple of months ago. I learned about this thing called a J-curve, which I didn't know about. No one bloody told me before I opened a squat. There's a thing called a J-curve in terms of your income, right? So I opened the squat and I'm, look at me, I've got all these patients and we've got all this money rolling in, and then suddenly it stops. And you're like, so you're going down, like your income's going down, and you're like, shit, I can't pay the wages this month. What am I going to do? And that's scary. It's horrible. It's horrible. So you're going down, 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 down into this horrible dip, and there's nothing worse. And then now I can see that we're just coming back up there. So it has been really, really hard. I'm not going to lie. And I think opening a squat, you have got to have balls of steel. You really do. Because you have to hold your nerve. It is really, really scary. But I have held my nerve, and I can see we're coming out the other side now. So honestly, COVID, honestly, I think COVID taught me so much. I'm actually so grateful for that time. It taught me a lot about myself. It taught me how to run a business, how to be a good leader. So I can only actually be grateful for COVID, to be honest. And I came out of it fairly unscathed for a private practice with no NHS funding. But I would say the last few months has been the hardest ever of my life.
Right. Wow. And is that because of the outlay that it had to take to get the practice open, and obviously the pressure that comes with that? Yeah. So, I mean, one thing this is a little bit of a finer detail, I guess, is Faresh, who owns 4 practices, Ascent Dental. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but they're down south. And he was saying when COVID happened, him and his business partner, they had to learn just to not communicate the panic to the team.
Yeah. Oh my God, it's really hard. Oh, it's so, yeah, I think I was slightly guilty of doing that.
But have you felt like in the past few months when you had this kind of down period, did you feel like the team were very much aware of everything that was going on, or did you hide some things strategically just to bear it on your own shoulders, or how did you approach it?
I think they would probably say I was a little bit guilty of communicating my slight panic. Not like in a, I don't know. Yeah, I think I probably shouldn't have made them aware, because they probably didn't need that extra pressure. They knew it was a squat practice. Not like I put pressure on them in a really horrible way, just like, come on guys, we need to get these patients in, we've got the wages to pay at the end of the month kind of stuff. But it was really funny. I spoke to my accountant yesterday, and the team can feel stuff we're getting there now. Like, you can see the patients coming through the door, you can see it's all happening, and you can see there's this kind of really nice vibe in the team and everything. But my accountant was like doing my projections, and he spoke to me and he said, yeah, it's been tight, hasn't it? And I'm like, understatement of the year. But I told that to my team, and they absolutely laughed. They thought, it was tight. But that's life, isn't it?
Right, and there isn't one, because you've just come out of a relatively hard period. So what I'm interested in is, would you recommend people out there trying to do their own squat practice?
Probably the wrong time to ask me. I think you need to. That's only a question that each individual can answer themselves. Yeah, if you want an easy life, then no.
Yeah, I mean, Kunal was saying if you're the type of person who's never really liked dentistry that much, but you like the business side, those people are really good. And he said the people who have a bit of both. So that seems to be you, Martina. You're good clinically, but you enjoy the business. Do you feel like you create more brands, or do you feel like dental architect is going to be the pinnacle, or do you feel like you're going to push it even more?
I don't know. Never say never. There might be like 20 dental architects around the country. I don't know. I don't have any plans. Like, I'm still recovering from this one.
Awesome. Yeah.
I don't know. Like I say, who knows what's around the corner?
Yeah, but everyone had I had a dip over Christmas as well. You know, December wasn't a good month.
December,
let's put it that way. So I think that's a universal thing. And even when I was talking to several different dentists who practice owners, they were saying the same thing. Over the last part of last year was pretty tight for a lot of people. I think that's important. A lot of people have this kind of image of running their own business, all hunky-dory, but something that you've communicated really honestly here today is how much stress it can be. And it's really important for people to have their eyes wide open as to the dark periods that you might have to deal with as well, and the pressure and how that affects your life as well. And managing that stress. How do you manage stress, Martina? How do you manage it?
I exercise.
Yeah.
Alcohol. I've got a spa membership, which is really nice. So I like to just like on a Sunday take myself off, just have a few hours in the spa. But I think exercise is I was joking. I was only slightly joking about the alcohol. I don't think it's the answer, put it that way. But no, exercise is really, really good. Like exercising COVID as well, really just helped my head out.
How many times a week do you do it? Do you exercise?
I get in the gym about, I'd say 5 times a week.
Wow. Okay. Disciplined then, eh?
Yeah, and I have like a proper routine, because if you don't, you won't. So I'll set my alarm 6 o'clock, get up, get in the gym. I'm very fortunate to have a gym in my house, so I can just do it when everyone's asleep and then get them all up and get ready for school.
And here's the last one. What would be a positive habit that you'd say has influenced your life the most? Like, you know, especially when dark periods are happening, you start to find like the certain things that have really helped me navigate this, whether it's self-talk or just, you know, talking to other people that you trust to vent. Like, what would you say is like been the thing that's helped you get through it the most?
Yeah, I think having that network of supportive peers, friends, has been incredibly important, and just surrounding myself with people that kind of inspire me. And you know, people are prepared to help you. People are prepared to help you a lot. You just have to ask for help. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I've always liked to surround myself with people that I aspire to be like, or who inspire me, and just get rid of the negative vibey people, because they ain't going to help you at all. And when you surround yourself with those kinds of people, it's incredibly powerful, because that becomes normal. That kind of looking at people that achieve like that, or work like that, or have those values, that's your normal.
Yeah, and it has a positive ripple effect. You're totally right.
Yeah.
And mentors are so important.
Yeah.
So that's it really, Martina. I want to thank you so much for your time and your honesty. And like I said, your brand's amazing. The practice looks unbelievable. And I'm sure you're going to be an even bigger success than you already are in the coming years.
Are we going to carry on up that J?
Absolutely, mate. That day is going to look like you're climbing Mount Everest, mate. You know what I mean?
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me on. I really
Not at all.
it.
Thanks for listening. Please leave a positive review and share the podcast to your circle. If you'd like to touch base with Dr. Harry Gill or inquire about mentoring, email the Dental Innovator Podcast at gmail.com.